So I don't know, maybe I have to fix it sometimes to like make it into a link when I copy and paste it from that. So like I don't it's we'll get there. Sorry about that.
Is
Okay, and
Cheryl
we are
on? Did
live.
we get Cheryl today or no?
I sent her the link. I think she's gonna take a second. That's the YouTube link. And in this chat, everything's enabled. You can paste photos, obviously appropriate. Let's see. Participants, is anyone waiting? Oh my God, this is like too many things going on here. And I don't think Mark apologized. I saw Carolyn Lev at her press conference said whatever that you know the Trenderagua guy they said had
Test,
to
test.
come back. Like, that guy is a gang member. That's what Carolyn Levitt
They
said.
they said he was MS-13. Yeah,
Yeah,
that they were
straight up.
back. Yeah.
So
He from 2019, it was confirmed by several immigration court processes that he was in fact MS-13, and then his claim to asylum was because his family's business was being targeted by this other like lower level gang. And in the time between 2019 and now, that gang has been eradicated in El Salvador. So he has no legal claim to be in the United States of America, other asylum or otherwise. Now, for some reason, some dumb immigration court judge did find his thing credible, despite the fact that he has a trouble of lying to the U.S. government for being honest and upfront with where he is and what he's doing here in our country. So that whole thing, that whole media shout out was garbage.
But and
He's
then
just a
and then on
dad.
and then
Get
and
out of
then
here.
and then on MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, they referred to him as the gay barber. So
Yeah, but
Oh, that was
why
another
is
guy.
that
well,
relevant?
JD said
Yeah,
this all at the beginning. JD said he's out and he doesn't belong in the states, and
yeah.
they didn't want to
And
take
it,
him at his word.
and I always have to be. I really am never. I haven't been on two-way to talk for a long time because of my what I've done with my life, and I'm a member of the FBI Citizens Academy, and I'm on the board, and I've worked with the FBI for many years in regard to people that have illegally come into our country from China who and people from the Middle East for over 20 years. So, you know, it's it immigration is a very complicated conversation with like eight different silos of types of immigrants, whether they're illegal or legal. And what's happened in the last 10 years is that everyone, you hear people on TV that are experts, allegedly, but they're not. And it's a very, very complex conversation. And, it's tough for the news media to cover it. It's very difficult.
hey
So,
James, haven't had you on in a while. Just I'd like to hear your voice, James.
yeah, all right, James. Sorry about that.
Oh, James, you're on mute. Okay, I'm gonna drop my. I don't know why I went to my
I
southern.
don't think I'm on mute. Am I on mute?
Good now. Good, we can hear you.
Okay. Um, we've actually got, I would say, political news out of Louisiana which kind of has some national stuff going on with it. We had an election this past Saturday. Some of it was local elections, but there were four constitutional amendments on the ballot. Amendment number 2 was really kind of a rewrite of a large section of our Constitution. It had to do with permanent cap on state income tax, a lot of other things dealing with taxes, we've got a lot of complicated tax structure down here. It's not very business friendly. And this was being pushed by these amendment resulted out of a special session last November. Our governor is Republican. our legislature, the Republicans have super majorities in both houses. And this is what came out of there. So they wanted to put this into, they wanted to rewrite part of the Constitution. Bit from a business point of view, Amendment 2 was, everybody said, this is great. This is what needs to be done. But there was so much in it. And I thought there's too much in this. People are not going to get it. All four of those amendments went down to defeat 60-40. Stunning defeat for the Republicans, and I am a Republican in this state. So now they're trying to regroup and figure out what's going on. But the people who came out against it were a strange coalition. There was a lot of money spent from out of state from frankly, far left groups to, knock this thing down. But there was also people, we're in the Bible Belt here, and there was information put out about how churches were going to lose their property tax exemption. Not entirely true at all. But I think that and I've already emailed Republican representative and senator. I thought all along, I said, you guys are not selling this. One, is too complicated. There's a lot of good things in it. It's just simply too complicated. And the turnout was 22%, which is very, very low. But on a local level, we had a property tax renewal for the sheriff, and it got defeated by the same margin. And we got a 4-term sheriff in here I'm not going to get into all that. And talking to people who voted against all these amendments, they're voting for a lot of different reasons. You literally got far left, and I would say far right, and a lot of people in between that voted against all this. So it's interesting. We have another tax election coming up on a 1-cent sales tax for our police jury, which is like a county commission, and it's very important to them. If that 1-cent sales tax doesn't get renewed, it'll cripple them. It'll put them out of business. And I was meeting with them yesterday on some road stuff, and I've told them, I said, this is not going to pass if y'all don't get out there and work and start presenting it. This may happen in y'all state. I don't want to go into it. This may happen in y'all state. When you have these off-year elections, where you're dealing with tax renewals, whether it's property tax, sales tax, and all that. Traditionally here in Louisiana, the best thing they do is no one talks about it. They want low voter turnout. They want these things renewed. They do not want to create a lot of controversy about it. And I've told them, in other words, they try to sneak it by. And I've told them, I said, that's not going to work anymore. People are a lot more engaged. They may be engaged with wrong information, but you've got to get out there and make your case. So looking at some of the stuff that happened in elections last night, there's just a lot of dynamics going on in the politics. And it's coming from a lot of different angles. And it's interesting to me. It all kind of points to one thing. You better get out and make your case for whatever you're trying to do. And you better present it with facts and present it simply, because the amount of misinformation, I don't care which side it comes from, political spectrum, that goes out now on social media, and social media is the way people get their information. It's not the paper. It's not really TV as much as people think it is. It's social media. And I think that I think that's probably something that's going on in other states too. So anyway, just
This is the thing I've been harping on in the chat. I just keep writing the word messaging in capital letters. The Republicans are terrible
always
at
have been.
at messaging. They're just terrible. I mean, if you can't sell waste, fraud, and abuse because you got a crazy guy who, when he's calm and he's on Joe Rogan, or if he's in the White House, he makes perfect sense. But then when he's left to his own druthers, he doesn't know how to sell it. And then the legacy media has doubled down, right? So we thought after the election there was going to be some kind of change because all of their board of directors were pissed off, and Joy Reid got fired from MSNBC, and all of this crap that we think there's going to be the change. No, the legacy media has doubled down, and they're just going to hold the line on Trump is bad. So what Trump will never do, though, unfortunately, because he's so self-centered, he doesn't care about the Republican Party, he cares about the brand of Trump, is that they're not going to message, they're not going to capitalize on the issues that they own and message them properly. Sending Stephen Miller, who I call President Miller, sending President Miller on CNN to yell at Caitlin Collins about the border is not messaging, And when you have these good things like with tariffs, you have to explain to the American people. You have to do these like Saturday fireside chats or whatever you got to do. You have to tell the people it's gonna hurt. This is what we're gonna, but this is the ultimate goal. But to see Cory Booker, I laughed at Cory Booker. I saw Frank Luntz. I don't know, you guys know who Frank Luntz is, the Republican pollster. So Frank Luntz was on News Nation last night, and that's what I watch. I watch News Nation, and he was like, "I watched the Cory Booker thing, and I think he's gonna be the major candidate for the Democratic Party." And I laughed because I'm like saying to myself, who the hell watched Cory Booker speak for 25 hours? Nobody gives a shit. You know what I mean? So,
Kenny,
yeah,
educated black people aren't stupid enough to put Cory Booker out front as the candidate. That'll
yeah,
never happen.
yeah. He's got issues. He's got issues. But and plus everybody knows that's a stunt. But getting back to the Republicans, because I went off my train of thought there a little bit. The Republicans have to message. They have to get out and sell their programs to the American people. Trump did a great job at doing that to get elected, but now you're elected, you're going to lose the midterm elections, and then you're not going to be able to recover. And it's just utterly ridiculous. That's why I get
don't-
frustrated with these people.
Kenny, I don't think a couple of things. Frank Luntz used to be a Republican pollster. I think Frank Luntz became known as the guy who had the room. It was live and people did it. Frank Luntz can be very correct. He can also be very wrong, especially when he starts predicting the future. When he wants to come out and make it, he's kind of a joke to me about half the time.
Hey,
Also,
James.
when you hear about messaging, every party claims that is the reason they lost. We're right. We couldn't message it right. That's what happened here in Louisiana just then. Now our governor kind of had a bad reaction Saturday night. He came out and said, "How stupid are you people in Louisiana?" I mean, not his exact words, but it's pretty close. So he didn't help himself there.
Hey, James.
Yes.
I followed a little bit of what was going on down there in Louisiana, and I think that part of the problem with bundling those four things together, I understand that black turnout was unusually high.
Very high.
And I can tell you, I think the one that probably drove black voter turnout was the one about expanding what juveniles can be tried for as adults for, and something about specialty courts or something.
What they're trying to do was basically said on certain crimes like murdering everybody in the room, very, first degree stuff, certain crimes. If you were under the age of 17, you'd be tried as an adult. The black community did turn out. I think that was the main one driving them. But again, across the board, I got people I knew extremely conservative, and they voted against this. And what should have been, what needs to be done in Louisiana is you need a new constitution. We haven't had one since 1974. I mean, I knew when they get rewritten about every 50 to 60 years down here. And that's a heavy lift to call a constitutional convention, to get all the delegates there and to do it. And I think the governor and conservative leadership, I think to their credit, said, look, we're so far behind in Louisiana from the rest of the South when it comes to taxation and all that. We got to get caught up in a hurry. We don't need to spend another 2 or 3 years. So I understand that, but there was a very heavy turnout. There was also a great article by a guy who analyzed it, and it's what he called the snapback effect. So you had a big election this past fall, huge election in our lifetime. And he says you can study this when you come back in the spring like we did with something as complicated as what they were trying to do. Republicans get fat and happy, just as Democrats get fat and happy
Yeah.
with their success. And he said it was the wrong time to do this. And I felt that from the very beginning. I said, y'all are just, I mean, the urgency is to do it is there, but this is the wrong time. You need to lay some more groundwork. You came up with this in a special session in November. And here it is 3 months later. You're going to, and I told him, I said, you're going to struggle with this. It actually went down to defeat more than I thought it would, though. That was kind of the shocking thing about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say on the
Yeah.
Wisconsin special election, and the Florida was never really in doubt. The Wisconsin, the special election, that's the same one that they had 2 years ago. It's literally the same one, and the Democrat won 10% in that one. So that all elections aren't equal per se, but that I don't quite know what the GOP's plan was for Wisconsin because I mean I know Elon did a little bit, but maybe he did quite a bit. I don't know what the how to judge that, but didn't work quite the same way as Pennsylvania, and I think that's because Elon, like Trump, I think when he's winning and when he's really on it, he thinks that he can do no wrong, and then he thinks he can just go in and maybe make something happen, and in reality he doesn't take advice, like they were saying on two way. Like he can be like kind of small and quiet and say the smart things, and then he'll like go crazy, and then he'll say something, something alienating, and
He spent $20 million there, and I would have spent $20 million. Wisconsin is a weird state.
it is a weird state. It's
I've
known.
been there. I've been there a lot, and it's been a long time. They have their teachers unions and their public workers unions up there, and they've got that old tradition, kind of like the Minnesota Democratic Farm Labor Party. It's very strong there. It's not what it used to be, but it's still very strong. But they go through phases where they're electing all Democrats for about 10 years. Then they go through a phase where they're electing all Republicans for about 10 years. And right now they may be transitioning some on that, but it's their races are always close. And you're
They're
right, Michael.
they're not as
That
easy.
particular race was just a rerun of what they had. So
Right.
it was basically the same thing.
Yeah, and I don't I'm kind of I'm on the line with Mark of like I hear and I think that some of the blowback from Doge and Elon Musk being so
Wisconsin.
upfront does have a cost for the GOP and for Trump, MAGA, whatever you want to say, but not quite sure. There's weakness there. There's weakness there. Unfortunately for the Democrats, they don't have enough centrality or to coalesce around one person and one voice and message for more than 10 minutes or like 1 week. And then, and then it just kind of goes out the door and it's a missed opportunity. But that's to be expected because they're still figuring out what the hell they want to do and who
Hey,
they want to
Michael.
be. Yeah.
How concerned are you that if we accept what you say as true, that the Democrats don't really have their act together? And I'll even throw in on the table that we ran an idiot candidate. I mean, I have no use for Kamala. If I ever got in a room with her, I've been in a room with her once before.
Oh, wait,
she would be really ticked off when I got done telling her how stupid she is.
You and I would be in the same boat. We might say different things, but we would land on the same point.
But here's my question. How concerned are you as a person who voted the way you did, that despite all of those weaknesses on the Democratic side and with their candidate, as I pointed out before, switched me 1 out of 50 Trump voters in 3
Oh,
states,
Chris,
and
come
she's
on, stop
president.
with that stuff. Stop.
What?
Thank
Give
He's
me,
you.
professor.
give me
He's
one.
professor.
Thank you.
Chris, give me 1 out of 30 in New Jersey. I'll give you the swing states. You give me New Jersey, and then who wins the presidency? Trump. So
Thank
stop.
you.
How
All right,
concerned am I?
Gerald.
Okay,
How
Come on,
concerned
let's
am I?
that's your
argue other
answer.
things. Let's
So
argue
The-
that,
other
so that,
things.
so that's your answer.
Well, my
That's
answer
fine.
is, I
here's
told you
what's going to
before,
happen in
Chris,
20.
you can't even go by that. You have to
He-
go by precincts and trends and all of that stuff. So
Here,
you wouldn't even get those votes.
here's
Well,
what.
look, I've heard your answer, and I've heard Cheryl's. I want to know what James or Michael think.
Hold on. As host, Cheryl just came
Let
back
Cheryl
in,
go.
so let me give her a moment, and then we'll
Sure.
we'll
Yeah,
continue.
yeah.
No, I'm
I
gonna let
wrote
you
down
go
your
talk.
question.
I'm sorry. I'm preparing for a meeting. I gotta be on Capitol
Oh, okay.
Hill.
All right.
We could
My bad.
get this
Yeah.
done. I'm fine. Good.
Yeah, sorry. To answer your question, how worried am I? First off, I'll just say this outright. If you go by history, and I do, 2026 is going to be a loser for the GOP. It will be unless the mitigating factor, the strongest mitigating factor is if any one of Trump's things, longer term things, not short term EOs that he writes in the blazing a trail or whatever. It's going to be where the economy is at, if the tariff things are working, or if the other things are right. He is upside down on the economic issue. I'm okay with that because I hope he's playing the long game. And of course, he never really explains out long term, longer than like a quarter, if that. He never really explains the longer term picture. I mean, he hints at it around the his messaging, but he never really goes hard into it like that. But aside from that, I think that the just by way of party things, I as much as I dog out the Democrats like I just did, they still are a party, and they didn't just disappear overnight. It's not like all the rhetoric around, well, the GOP won, or Trumpism won, MAGA forever, da da da. That's all great in victory and all that, but it's you still have a Democrat Party that still wakes up every day, and people that believe in it, that is still going to go forward despite having like no upper leadership or no overall platform, planking. Now, if the Democrats don't get into the game and soon with whatever it is that they centralize on, and it cannot be a David Hogg on Twitter, being the face of the Democrat Party, or that goofball Tim Walz. Like, get
Yeah,
those
it
guys
won't
out
be
of the
him.
yeah, get those guys get them out of the way, but it is what it is. They'll figure it out. But it'll be in the Democrats' favor for 2026, but it might not be as it'll be if it'll either be one of three things, right? So it'll be either a strong Democrat win and a direct referendum on Trumpism up to that point, maybe, or Trump as a president, blah 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 blah, or it'll be a strong or a weak one, a very weak one where they couldn't take more advantage of it, and it'll just be the same numbers, only flip flop. So what? So they got whatever. Now, if the Democrats get the House, they are waiting. There are stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of papers that they're ready to go that are not goofy, to try to do the impeachment 3.0. They just are. And if
Yes,
they
they
can, if
are.
they can, that's the danger for the GOP. If the Democrats can get any kind of power in either Senate or House, they might have but again, it all goes back to like whether Trump can deliver on what he's doing. And I think he will. I think it's just going to take a little bit longer for
Well,
the economy, but
I
I
think
have no
they
idea.
go-
well, the market is live
Go
today,
ahead.
and this
Go
is
ahead, Cheryl.
interesting. The stock market is live, and it is not as bad right now as they have been projecting. But I guess today is the first day, so we'll see. But it's it's not what I thought it would be. I thought
Hey,
everything would be in the red, and it's not. It's not. I mean, it's been going down for the past month, but again, I don't see anything rocket scientists that are about to kill us right now. So I don't know. Maybe they've baked it in now since they've had time for past 60 days to do that.
jump in, James, please.
I think, first of all, I think it's real early to start predicting 2026 and 2028 Democrats nominees. I mean, it's very early, but I think we do. Republicans, y'all have heard me talk about this before, and I've never been able to get on two-way and talk. Chris, I'm gonna put myself down as a Democrat. I bet Mark will put me on tomorrow. But their fundamental weakness, the Republicans, when it comes to everything, has been the House of Representatives, which I say is still being treated like a redheaded stepchild. It was all about presidents. It was all about the Senate. And there's poor Mike Johnson going, if I could get an additional 5, 10 seats, it'd be a lot easier instead of having 2 as a margin. Because there's 2 things that's transpired over the past week that's proven that out. One is Elise Stefanik is not going to be the UN ambassador. She's got to go back to the House to maintain their margin.
Yeah, I
Two.
want to make one point to enhance James's point. He called this like months ago. Just for the record, I just want to say that in your favor, James. Sorry.
And 2, yesterday, they took this vote where they lost about 8 or 9 Republicans on this, whatever it was, the proxy voting, which I think proxy voting is horrible because it's just going to lead into everything else. And I think it was Mike Johnson's reasoning on it. So now they have to go, they basically sent them all home. You're always, I don't care which party is in power, the Democrats are much better at it, but even I've seen it in my past. When you've got these very thin margins, you're always going to have 4, 5, 6, maybe up to 10 people who just are going to find a reason to vote the other way. So you need, if he had a 230 to 205, he could govern a lot easier. He doesn't have that. And we're so, poor little congressman, there's 435 of them. No one gives a rat's ass about any one of them at any given moment. But the senators get all the stuff, of course, the president and the cabinet secretaries and all this stuff. They've got to work on this. And I talked a while back to somebody on Johnson's staff, which we don't communicate a lot. And I made my point. And he said that behind the scenes, he has been begging for this and he's just not getting any response. I mean, he's getting, some help. But the 2 races in Florida, the guy who replaced Walz he's not well liked. It's just because he ran in a district that I could probably move to Florida and win in it, 6 months from now. But they've got to correct this thing in the House. People are worried now that they're going to quote, lose the House. I think it's way too early on that stuff. This fall, you might get a little bit better gauge on that. And my history is right, but we're in such times that things just change on a dime from day to day. But they need to fix it. 2026, the Senate kind of favors the Democrats, but it's more of a break-even deal. I think they're going to retain control of the Senate. I think they literally could pick up a seat or 2. But these House races, they need to go out and find really good candidates, which I think they're doing a better job than they used to on the Republican side. But anyway, that's just my view on that.
I'm from Florida. Randy Fine was an awful candidate. He's awful in the Florida. He was awful. I think he was in the Florida Senate, but he was fighting with DeSantis about.
Yeah.
DeSantis called a special session to, iron out immigration here, and he was one of the people who wanted to move the power of immigration enforcement to the agricultural secretary. So. Yeah, Fine was a bad candidate. I hope they find a stronger candidate to replace him. But the midterms historically go to the opposition party. So we need to get a lot of candidates who are in line with, the populist MAGA movement and not, Republicans tend to fold for some reason. So
They're fat and happy. They're fat and happy. They do fat and happy really good.
Do you guys want to
But-
comment on this? I think Cheryl had me pull this up. I don't know if this is correct. Are these the seats that are up for grabs?
Yeah, I've looked at that. That is correct. The 270 to win is a good website, Cheryl. I look at it often.
Yeah, I tried to ask AI to tell me and make a table of all the open seats for Congress, and it told me that all 435 seats were up for election. Okay, thanks AI. more proof AI is dumb. Jesus.
There,
Well,
there is a
that's-
Democrat in Florida I do like who's in the House. I like Jared Moskowitz. He actually went to high school with my sister.
Moskowitz is an interesting guy. He's a Democrat, but he was DeSantis's
He's
emergency guy, disaster guy, and
he's someone I think could who seems more willing to work with Republicans,
Yeah.
and I follow him on X, and he calls out Republicans, but he's got a good head on his shoulders. I do like him. I I think that's everyone's talking about Ro Khanna, and I mean Ro Khanna supported Bernie Sanders' economic craziness, essentially economic socialism. If the Democrats want to be competitive and be a true opposition party, they need people like Moskowitz who will cross the aisle. I see him a lot on other networks other than Fox. Is Fox? He'll go to hostile places too. But Chris, what are your thoughts on Moskowitz?
I don't really know him.
I've seen him, Alan. I've seen him quite a bit, and it's funny to me. The right now perception is, let's find a Democrat who's not crazy, who's calm, and on Republicans, it's kind of like, you're not crazy enough. On the MAGA end, you got to get out there and really make sure that everybody knows you are that. But political races, individual races always come down. I've seen great candidates run bad campaigns and lose. I've seen bad candidates have great campaigns and win. And you got to have a good candidate. You have a good candidate and a good campaign, chances are a lot better that you're going to maybe win. You still got to fight.
MAGA.
Are you suggesting Moskowitz could run for president?
No, I think he needs to. I don't think he should run for president. I just think he needs to take a bigger role in crafting Democrats' messaging, because he can appeal to people who. I mean, I voted for Trump 3 times. I'm solid in Trump's camp, but I'm always a proponent of a strong opposition party like that has good ideas where maybe it can spark something in my head to say, hey, let's figure out a way to come to the middle of Democrats have 10 ideas, 3 are good. Republicans have 10 ideas, 5 are good. Find what intersects and work on crafting things in the House to pass into law that actually benefit everyone. And one of the things I've been researching with AI is that Congress, the legislative branch, has ceded power to the executive. Whether it's a Republican or Democrat in power, they've ceded a lot of their power over to the executive to make the decision so he can take the heat, and they can just sit in Congress, keep getting reelected, insider trade, send money to the NGOs. And I'm not a MAGA person who doesn't think that there's NGOs controlled by Republicans getting money from the Congress, because they're not line iteming where the money is going. They're just sending it to the NGO or the agency to spend, and they're using their power of the purse, but they're not doing what they were elected to do and make sure these bills actually are doing right by the people. And then, you know, the executive is, you know, every Democrat comes in, gets rid of Republicans' EOs. Republican comes in, gets rid of the Democrats' EOs, and there's nothing codified in the law to make sure that, you know, we're being taken care of as a country. And in the meantime, those people in Congress are just sitting there getting rich, like enhancing themselves. I mean, that's what I see is going on. And, you know, the amount of bills passed in the past 40 years in my lifetime compared to the amount of bills passed in the previous 100 years is minuscule. So I mean that's just something I'm researching on my own, being that AI can like comb through tons of data, but you know, that's something I've been playing with in my free time.
Yeah, well, just to address one point you made, I think there are plenty of Democrats who have, you know, enough good ideas to move the party more to the center. We just got to find the right set of leaders and the right candidate to basically tell some of the crazies on the left to sit down and shut up.
They're not good at sitting down and shutting up.
Well, neither. I mean, again, I've been a Republican my whole life. And you know, I'm not saying it's a perfect party. There's a lot of things. I like where the parties come to, because on like social issues, I always thought it was ridiculous that, you know, Republicans were against, you know, they were against, you know, people getting married to whoever they want to get married to. That that that's something I don't care about. It doesn't affect me, and if it makes someone happy to live their life how they want to live their life, that's fine by me. Why am I interfering with it? You know, so I'm glad the party has moved more, the Republican Party has moved to the left on that, as far as, you know, infringing on people's individual liberties, because, you know, but I like where the Republican Party's moved to since Trump has ascended. He took a wrecking ball to the old Republican Party and has created a more socially moderate party. Um, which I mean, I've always been socially moderate, but like when it comes to my money, when it comes to government infringing on my Second Amendment rights and things like that, that's where I've always, you know, always been more, you know, to the right.
Hey, do you
And
consider abortion bans socially moderate?
Yeah, I was going to jump in.
no, I'm not talking about the abortion issue is I don't agree with abortion in general, but like I don't want the government to infringe on anyone's right.
Yeah,
Like
but Alan, I got to interrupt you.
abortion's a losing thing.
I'm a Republican. There's no way you can make the argument that Trump and his people are more socially moderate. That's
Thank you.
not correct. That's not correct.
Okay.
You know,
I'll take your point.
yeah, they listen, you know, look at just the transgender issue. You know, they want to eliminate transgender people. You know what I mean?
That's
You know,
they want to, like, they've gone too far on that. Like
Yeah.
the getting the
well,
women
no, I
out.
don't think. To be honest with you, I don't think they've gone too far. Yeah, trying to eliminate people in general is going too far. The issue, look, I don't want to get into the trans thing because it's such
Yeah.
a minor thing, but they capitalized on it. But the bottom line is the Republican Party under Trump and the Republican Party before Trump was definitely, especially with the right wing of, you know, the religious right, is definitely not a socially moderate party. Okay, so let's just be clear there.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean,
So now, yeah, you're right. You're right. And I know yesterday somebody got off the call because they started in on the history, the truth of things. But now I'm going to talk to you about, I'm 68. I you know, they registered me as a Republican because I was going to Villanova in 1975 when I was 18, and I worked on the Gerald Ford campaign. And so just so you understand, Planned Parenthood was started by George Herbert Walker Bush's father, Prescott Bush. The Bushes were living in Greenwich. He was a senator, and he was the investment banker to the John D. Rockefeller. So in the late 50s, early 60s, him and Bill Buckley had a meeting, and Prescott Bush and all their friends in Greenwich decided to start Planned Parenthood because they thought African Americans, women, they felt that they needed to be able to have abortions and they couldn't pay for them. So the Republican Party is the one that started Planned Parenthood. I know this seems hard to believe, but you can go Google it and find all about it. So Barry Goldwater, who you think is very, very conservative, was on board with that. So once again, the Republican Party from the late 50s and early 60s started Planned Parenthood. George Herbert Walker Bush and Barbara Bush were pro choice because of his father, and they were involved in Planned Parenthood. At the 1980 convention, they were considering Gerald Ford for vice president, but then Gerald Ford walked in the room and said, "This will be great. It will be a co-presidency." Then Reagan said no. So then they went to Reagan and said, and it's all in the books. It's all in the autobiographies. They went to Reagan and said, "What about the runner-up, George Herbert Walker Bush? Been a good guy. He was, RNC chair during Watergate. He was CIA director, ambassador to China. Good guy." So they walk him into the room. They make Bush the vice president. Reagan leaves, and then the advisors turn to Bush and say, "So you and your wife are pro-choice. Do you understand tomorrow you're going to be pro-life?" And he said, "Yes, that's fine."
That's why I've been a slightly disgruntled Republican since January 20th, 1989 at 12 o'clock.
So, and not,
When
I know
George Bush took
sometimes
office.
people, I am a public policy professional. I don't know anything about art history and poetry, but you can take almost every issue, public policy issue, and both sides have been on both sides of the issue. So Barack Obama, when he ran for Senate in 2004, was anti-gay marriage. And even when he was elected in 2008, he didn't talk about it. It was Biden who went on TV one day and said, "I am for gay marriage." And then the Obama people were like, whoa, what happened here? And then Obama said, "Yeah, I agree with, Biden. I'm for gay marriage too."
Okay, we got Cheryl, the regulator, chiming in.
All right,
Regulate,
sorry.
Cheryl.
I'm just pointing out that both the history on some of these issues is really, both sides have been on both sides of these issues.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
well,
I want to go.
go
I
for
want to
it.
go back to this Planned Parenthood. Okay, so you said Planned Parenthood was started under who now?
Prescott Bush and the Republicans, they lived in Greenwich, Connecticut,
Okay,
and Bill
Planned
Buckley.
Parenthood goes back to the early 1900, like 1916 or something. Well,
Well,
let me
that's
go
the
back.
Margaret Sanger. I'm talking
Yes,
about the
yes.
the current day Planned Parenthood.
Okay, it started receiving federal funding. Let's see, has received federal funding since 1970 when President Richard Nixon signed into law the Family Planning Services and Population Research Act, amending the Public Health Services Act. So, what year are you saying this started?
The late 50s, early 60s, it was an attempt to help African American women not have to have another child.
Okay, which is my big issue with Planned Parenthood as an African American. My
Well,
issue with Planned Parenthood is it was set up to to hurt us as a race. I really
yes,
do.
and
It was to
and
annihilate us as a race. And this is also one of my big issues with the Democratic Party, is that although this was signed into law under Nixon, is that Planned Parenthood, who Democrats support so fully, is a detriment to us as a people.
right, and what's interesting about that, so in 1976, when I was involved with Ford, there were many African American women and men who accused the Republican Party of using Planned Parenthood against African Americans as a racist tool to control the black population. I mean, this was said openly. Like, you'd go to a town meeting and there were African Americans saying that. So
what James said earlier about 1989, I feel is so radical, like in the true sense that Bush, Obama, Clinton, like Vincent, both parties have had have held both policy positions.
Right.
It's been a freaking Borg, and to think that the Hegelian dialectic that Anthony Sutton called it, right? That like back in the 80s or 90s, we might have been fighting each other, not realizing we were supporting the same foreign policy objectives, which, again, how anyone like Zygmunt Brzezinski can be so intelligent and at the same time think that people that look like me but wear turbans and long beards are somehow America's best friends in the shadows is beyond the pale. And Trump has said, his biggest statement in 2016 was, "I think Islam hates us." And that was translation for the 2 of 3 of the Muslim world that have those core verses, not the Quran, but the Hadith. Way inside politics, way to the weeds, but it does matter if people want world peace, right? These are very simple things you could be neutral on them, but the State Department under Hillary Clinton doubled down on the fanatic verses, right? These are the madrasas, school mosques. We're going to, just like so-called lefty communitarianism, right? Oh, the government's going to do everything. The mosque is going to do everything, right? And so it's that weird parallel that we, MAGA, America First, just rejected. We said, we're done with that shadow government BS where, oh, they're baddies, but they're on our side now, so.
And Alan, we're talking earlier about congressional races. I think that how Congress acts has changed dramatically in the last number of years. After World War II, and even before then, especially after World War II, you had people who stayed in the House and stayed in the Senate for decades and became chairman of appropriation committees and things like that. They were in that for years, and you stayed in Congress for years to get to that point where you could chair that committee that you liked. That, I think, is going away. When you see Nancy Pelosi, when you see Chuck Schumer, I'm just pointing out the Democrat side, they're old and they're done. The same thing has happened to the Republican Party over the years. They had guys who stayed on, girls who stayed on too long. I think we're going through a generational change in this country, like we do every 30 years in our politics. And right now, I don't think the Democrats they're going to find their leaders. Chris is right. They're going to have to find somebody who's going to have to get them back toward the center, and it's got to be real. It can't just be standing up like Democrats have done in the past. I'm really a middle of the road guy, But now that I'm in office, I'm going to go do as much as I can to take us to the left. Bill Clinton, in his first 2 years of office, got to increase taxes, tried to introduce the forerunner of Obamacare, which was Hillary Care.
Right.
And what happened in 1994?
He lost everything.
He lost it.
First time first time the Republican Party took Congress in 40 years.
In 40 years.
And so do you
Every time
understand?
Bill Clinton goes to
Two
McDonald's,
generations.
he should call Newt Gingrich and say, what
Right.
can I pick up for you here at McDonald's? They both like fast food.
Right.
Newt Gingrich and Republicans. So Clinton comes back in. His State of the Union speech is, and what is first thing he says? The era of big government is over.
So do you realize? Do you
So-
do you realize that in the fall of 1974, after Watergate, everyone in the media, everyone in academia, when I was in college, said the Republican Party will never take over the House, because it was like after Watergate, it was like 330 to like 135. It was so everyone, even in 1985, no one would have ever thought that the Republican Party could ever take control of the House again. It was like,
Ronald Reagan succeeded getting things done
yeah, with
a
Tip
Democratic
O'Neill.
House, and he
Right.
succeeded mostly with Southern conservative Democrats.
Right.
Many, including about 2 or 3 in this state, switched from Democratic to Republican.
Yes.
So, but I think the dynamics have changed quite a bit. People don't change, but the times do. It's kind of my saying. And
Well, now, Jim, I have to point out that I have some very uncomplimentary analyses I could lay out as to why the South went Republican from Democrat.
I
Oh,
know it,
yeah.
and I've heard them all before. So
We know it.
and I don't think that. And by the way, I don't think most of that's true, Chris. So
All right, well, that's a topic for another day.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I can point out that hey, there ain't been nobody but poor people in the South just about all my life. So, we're just now the
And that
wealth
is
was
true.
wiped out. The wealth was wiped out 150 years ago. It took us 100 years to just get back to where we could subsist. And
Yeah.
now we have a $6 billion manufacturing facility being built over in the middle of the Delta by Meta, which is going to be one of their data centers. We've got, so.
And,
Yeah.
and
I agree. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
just what I wanted to point out, Cheryl, is that, I mean, all I'm doing here in the background is pulling up, you guys are posting links, I'm sharing them. Why isn't Mark doing that in the morning meeting, right? When he throws out wild things, and we spent yesterday with Mark going, oh, forget the lawyers, bring that guy back. Bring who back, Mark? The gang member, according to Carolyn Levitt? I mean, maybe Carolyn Levitt's wrong, but put it up on the screen, right? Mark
Well-
has to up his game. Sorry.
Yeah,
Cheryl.
Rahul, we can't control. I mean, that might be the way that we want him to run the meeting, but I don't know what his end goal is and what he's trying to do. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
Mark
maybe
wants
that's
us
a lot
focused
for
on
him to maybe that's a lot for him to kind of manage the two. And maybe when he brings in, I know he's trying to get bring in more team members. I mean, maybe he can be a little bit more, but trying to manage. You got Sean speaking, you got Dan speaking, you got, all these people with their hands raised. I mean, it's just maybe a whole lot for him to kind of, manage right now. So maybe we
I
can
don't
bring in more
know.
social
Yeah, I
media
agree.
team.
I agree with you. Now, were you all on the meeting last night with Senator McCormick and his wife?
I
That was
was.
that was
That
the
was
most
very good.
that was the most positive. I've been on the call since June. That was the most positive, inspirational, uplifting, two-way, and there was no hate from both sides. That was a
Yeah.
really nice call.
Yeah.
And like even myself, I've watched that one
I'm gonna have
one
to
of
jump, guys.
one of the top aides for Trump was on, and I've always perceived him as being like when he's on Fox or
You talking about
Newsmax.
Jason Miller?
Yeah, he was really down to earth.
Yeah.
He seemed like a normal human being. I never, but when he goes on Fox and Newsmax, he's got to sound like, Mr. MAGA. I really enjoyed listening to him. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, that was a great story
Yeah.
He
of him
can
being.
can be
I thought it was
he can be
great.
very calm.
Only part that I disliked is at the end when Mark threw him under the bus. He says, "Well, I'll open the floor and let anybody say what they want to say." And then he says, "Oh, Jason, would you like to talk about tariffs?" And he didn't bite it. He didn't say a word. And so
Right,
I just
right.
felt that's the only thing is it was a very nice meeting. We were pretty much, you know, at the end, and then it's like he wanted to throw
That was
Jason
the
under the
guy in the
bus.
Roosevelt room, right? That was the one who was doing it from the Roosevelt room last night, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah,
I kind
Senator.
of bearded guy with the
Yes,
glasses.
yes, yes.
Yes, that's him.
Yeah, and it was, they've written that book, and it really made anyone that has had any degree of success in their life. You step back and you think, who helped me? It was a really nice conversation. You
Yeah.
know, I
Mhm.
mean, and there was good stories.
Yeah.
You know,
So, did you all watch the presser yesterday? Because Mark was the first person that Caroline
yes,
called on, and it was though. I mean, he had such a warm welcome, and then it was the. I'm not saying that wasn't positive that she gave him a warm welcome, but then he, asked the question on the tariffs, and then he went into the question from the educator. I don't know. Just made it sound like it wasn't it was like planted. I don't know. That's the only thing. But I
Yeah,
don't know. She
I
is good at her job, so but I don't know. It just seemed really planted. Like it
what I
was
was trying to say
all
earlier is you're right, Cheryl. We can't control Mark. I mean, he has two or three two-way admins in there, right? And there's a lot of moving parts. That's all agreed. I guess that what I'm grappling with, right, is it's kind of a challenge of, like we all have platforms now, right? Like, and so Elon Musk, he says something, the media jumps on it in 10, 20 different ways. And so it's like we all have to sharpen our skills here. I mean, that's why I'm sharing the screen, right? Because we have to, in other words, be fact checking ourselves to kind of, okay, what is the point? What is the counterpoint? And just sharpen the message. And so it's a kind of a crazy world, right? Where we can point the finger at anyone out there, and then what's the saying? 10 fingers pointing back at us, So I just say,
I think it is too is there is no look. I quickly in this meeting yesterday with a guy stand up going worried about his tax renewal, and he picks up his phone and he says, "The problem we've got is anybody can get on one of these things and just say anything they want to." And I looked at him. This is a guy's a friend of mine. I said, "Look," I said, "no one's reading the Jackson Independent. That used to be our weekly paper around here, but it went out of business 10 years ago." I said, "No one's listening to KTOC, which is the local radio station, gone. It's been gone. No one's listening to the CBS station come out of Monroe or out of Shreveport to cover this." I said, "This is where people are getting their information. You're either going to take it and control your narrative, which is all you can do, refute that's not factual." But I said, "You've actually got to engage in it instead of running an ad in the paper, instead of writing a letter to the editor." And so all this information is coming at people all day long. And that's why they scroll and they scroll, and all they do is grab headlines. And we don't have a lot of deep conversation yet. So much information, like you've been posting, is available. And you've got to, people have, and in a way, I think it's really good that people have got to become more engaged. On the other hand, a lot of people just aren't very good at getting beyond a 2-minute read on stuff.
Yeah,
That's
no,
right.
and then
Their
that
patience isn't there, not understanding it, and then you just getting an editorial of somebody else's perspective. You don't get a chance to get other different perspectives now without reading a whole. It's all face to face, or it's all just in time. You can talk to other people, and so that's the good thing about. I mean, we can say all the bad things we want to say about social media, but I think there's
Well, it's the way things are
great
now,
things with that.
and
That's right. And I think with AI, it's going to be even more.
what right. And so Bernstein wrote a book, and then he went on tour, and he was at Fairfield University, not far from where I live. So I've talked to him before, and then after his speech to the it was a packed house. You know, he's not optimistic about the future because there's no local newspapers anymore, and a lot of people used to get their local information about their state government or local government from local newspapers. So there's no local newspapers, and then he's also pessimistic about the fact that there's no local news. People that are younger, millennial and below, don't watch the news, and they don't watch the local news. So he feels and they're getting their news from obviously Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, or not even Facebook, but because X. And the problem is, a lot of those stories aren't vetted. They're not written by journalists. So there's a lot of confusion. I mean, and it's, people, there was an article in the Atlantic from, there was a number of Ivy League professors that were interviewed, and the students they said, okay, you're in English literature, we have 5 books to read, and the students are coming in and saying, do I really have to read these 5 books? And then the professors of these Ivy League schools have stated that the majority of their students are saying they've never read a book. I'm just telling you what they've never read a book.
Well,
And they
Well,
said,
they've never read, Vincent, because it's the material is absolutely boring, right? What drew me into, I got it in the background, Professor Facchetti, is he's describing today, what do they do? QE, right? Inflation, and then the shadow government grabs their cut. Back in the day with silver coinage, with the Caesars, they would take the coins for tax collection and they would shave the outside of the coin, and then they'd collect the shavings, and that's how the Caesars funded their war chest. And then we village idiots are walking around, hey, my coin's a little lighter. I wonder why these coins, and that was the game back then. Now there's a modern day game. But if we get into the meat of the things, that kids will be curious, right? About, whoa, what is that, right? Versus the surface level stuff that they're throwing at us. So I mean, it's kind of, the content is just so like take me prior to World War I. I don't want to know about after COVID, after Australia sending people to internment camps. Don't tell me about Japanese Americans were mistreated in World War II. We mistreated Australians now, just a year ago, right? And then don't get me started about the mask.
oh, but I got out of high school in 1975, and then I went to Villanova. So obviously, I had to read all the Hemingway, Faulkner, Gatsby. I had to read these classic English literature books, or To Kill a Mockingbird. Well, now the people in college have never read any of those books. Now I don't know, is that
But Vincent, that they must be reading something. You can't get. I
no,
think it
no,
would
but
be
they've
very
never read
difficult.
those books.
I
I'm
think it would be
shocked.
very difficult to get a 780 on the verbal part of the SAT if you haven't been reading something.
Well, they're I
I
guess
Yeah,
let me
they're reading
let
that
me
two men can get together and have a
as a
family.
college professor, let me tell you my experience with it, right? So, most of the time I'm teaching Cinema 100, which is Introduction to Film, right? So what I would do, and I get 2 classes a semester. Lately, I've been getting 400 level classes, which is good. But what I would do is I make my students fill out an index card. Uh, at the first day. I pass out an index card. I ask them to put their name and their student ID number. And then I ask them, list your 3 favorite films and list your 3 favorite works of literature. And I tell them, it doesn't have to be a book. It could be a magazine or an article or a short story or whatever. So inevitably, students will write down Great Gatsby, Catcher in the Rye, that kind of stuff, right? So then I'll go around the classroom and I'll say, okay, Great Gatsby, tell me about what'd you like about Great Gatsby? And they can't tell you anything because they didn't read it.
I know.
And I'll actually have students write on the index card, I don't like to read. And so those students, I literally say, I said, for those of you who put, I don't like to read, you're in college now. College is 2 words, critical thinking. If you don't read this, you're not going to be able to do critical thinking. And it's also critical writing. And if you don't read, I'm sure you don't know how to write either. So it is a major gap. Like I think I've said previously on this on our little post two-way here, I've said high school is really a social exercise for most students, not all. There's some students that are students, they do great in high school, they do great in college, they do great in their post careers. But for the most part, high school is a social exercise. You learn how to interact with other people, you develop really good friendships, you learn how to have sex, you learn how to drink your first drink or smoke your first joint or whatever it is, but it's a social exercise. It's fundamentally not focused on education. It's really about getting you through and getting you graduated. So I mean, that's not, like I said, I'll qualify by saying it's not everybody. But what I see, and don't forget, I'm City University. I teach at the College of Staten Island. It's not Harvard, right? So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I've got friends in New York City who are paying $50,000 a year for their kids to go to private school, and I'm pretty damn sure they're making them read something for that
oh,
kind of money.
listen, if you're
Yeah.
paying 50,000, you better. I had asked Dan about this because during COVID, he was saying how his kids, his own kids, fell behind in reading and stuff like that. And I was surprised because Dan, being as smart as he is, and his wife being on top, you would think they would have
They
kept
were
them up to,
homeschooled. That's
yeah,
right.
they would have kept them up to date, And he said his kids really struggled with being home. So
No, you guys are a real problem because you're making me repeatedly late for other calls I'm supposed to be on because I'm enjoying this way more than the other stuff I'm supposed to go do. But
I
I'm
get
10
you.
minutes
Oh,
late
I
for one,
agree with you.
so
I
I gotta
love
go.
listening.
Later,
I know.
Good
Chris.
see, good
Well,
seeing you,
that's a
Chris.
good conversation. I would like us to go back to at some point, the whole education system.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, Chris mentioned, well, how did they get a 780? Okay, so I had a 1400, and I and now they changed the test many, many times, and now I've read that if you had a 1400 in 1974, you really would have a 1600 now. They changed the test like 3 times. But so what happens is from the time kids are freshmen in high school, they start training them to take the SAT test. First the PSAT, then the SAT test. So then people in the suburbs where I live pay pay tutors $100 an hour to get their kids to just learn how to take the test, and they get good scores. And now I got a 1410, and the night before I took the test, I went out to with my girlfriend to see Godfather 2. So I never there was no practice test. I just walked in. I did well in high school, read a lot of books, loved history, and it did well in math and took the test, and that was it. But uh, so I became, I've spoken at 100 schools, and a lot of people that are in industry have walked up to me and said, when I initially met you, I just thought you're some blowhard who really is full of shit. And I'm like, why is that? And they'd say, well, it's because of your New York accent. You sound like a hustle. But I really listen to you. You really know American history. So what books should I read to learn American history? And I'm like, William Manchester, Stephen Ambrose, uh, David Halberstam, and then I'll go through and you've read all those books. So I said, uh-huh. And I'm like, what? And why do you think you saw me in front of the room as a moderator? What do you think? I'm some motivational speaker and I'm just bullshitting you? And they're like, yeah, I actually thought that. So it's like these, you know, so many millennials and younger are so skeptical of everyone. They just have a basic distrust of people. And when they come upon someone that actually they can learn something from, they think the person's a con. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's I don't know. Something's really bad happened in the last 50 years in the United States.
I agree with you, Vince. I'm very popular with my students because I'm enthusiastic and I got the Brooklyn accent. I'll even drop an F-bomb here or there in the
Right.
classroom, but I can communicate with my students. I can connect with them and they trust me. I get their trust, and that's the most
Right.
important thing. Plus, I know what I'm talking about. Like one of my professors that I had was a writer. It was a writing class and in college, and she was very active. She was gay. She was very active in the AIDS movement back in the day. She's a published author, but what she did to catch my eye is she walked into the classroom, she gave a little intro, and she said, I know what I'm talking about. And she said it with confidence, and it made me say, I'm going to pay attention to her because she knows what she's talking about. I believe her, it was she was an excellent writing teacher.
That's kind of
So,
like
And it's so funny because there's such a mistrust. So almost once a month, I'll get an email or I'll get a call, and somebody will say, I went to high school with this guy, Vinny Caprio, and he was the president of the class, And do you know that? Do you know that there's a guy? There's a guy that's uh, the founder of the Nano Business Commercialization Association, who's a scientist. He has the same name as you. I'm like, well, that's me. Well, why? Really? That's you? And this happens to me often. I've had people, I'll be speaking at a school and somebody will walk up to me and like, uh, how did, there's someone with the same name as you. And I'm like, no, that's me. People evolve, I mean, there's a whole distrust of anyone that's an intellectual or has the knowledge. Everybody thinks it's a scam. It's like really, and look, it's social media that did that because there's too much doubt of people. It's just really,
Cheryl,
well,
did you want to
Vincent,
hop on the education thing?
I think Vincent, other day I pulled up the Sonic, ordered on the Sonic app.
mhm.
Young man brings out the
So,
order and he said, Very nice. I never seen him. I think he was new. Very nice young man. He said, "How's your day going?" I said, "It's going great. I've come here to get my water." I said, "How's yours?" Now, he should have been running back there, but he said, "Well, I took the A. It's been a long day," he said. I said, "Really?" He said, "I took the ACT yesterday." I said, "You did?" So I'm thinking, I thought the guy a little bit. He's a high school guy, and he said, "I said, well, let me ask you, have you taken it before?" He said, uh, "No, but I think he took it yesterday. He got the results." He said, "I said, what did you make on your ACT?" He said, "I made 19." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Let
Is
me
it
ask you."
is it still like a
I said,
35 or
I
37?
said, "Do you are you gonna take it again?" He said, "Oh yeah." I took the ACT once. We didn't do the SAT. Took it once. But today they'll take it, like you say, they'll take it, they'll practice it, and they'll take it again. And they most of them take it 3 times, from what I understand, on ACT down in this part of the country. And but I don't know. Like I say, I think times have changed, but people do
Yeah.
not change. But I do think that there are. I'm kind of like Chris. They're reading something. I think that there's a lot of young people that are reading more in depth than we realize. A lot of them are not. A lot of them don't know the first president of the United States. A lot of them don't hardly know who the current vice president is. I mean, it's just things like that. But I don't interact with them every day, but I interact with college students quite a bit. And I find many of them are very bright. Uh,
Cheryl?
so, look,
Um,
I was a
what?
guy who, I remember history professor, first day of class, going over his, what we've been doing, the number of tests. This young guy, some guy raises his hand. He said, "Dr. Bice, how many pop quizzes will we have?" And he lowered his glasses and he said, "Excuse me?" The guy said, "How many pop quizzes will we have?" He said, "Young man, I don't do pop quizzes. We don't do pop quizzes in college. That's in high school. You're either going to learn what I teach you and pass the test, or you're not." So about 2 quarters later, I was in an economics class. I think it was 201. And the guy who was professor is just, he'd been there forever, but I don't know, he was a PhD. He'd just been there forever. He just taught that class and everybody had to take it, deal. And he walks in one morning, it's like 8 o'clock morning, and I'm sitting there having studied all night long the night before, and I studied how to drink beer. So I'm sitting there not feeling well, and a guy walks in and he starts shuffling papers and he says, "Well, we're going to have a pop quiz this morning." And everybody kind of looked around. I raised my hand. I said, "Mr. Byers, we don't take pop quizzes in college." And he looked at me like we were crazy. And I said, "We don't do pop quizzes. I'm told we don't do pop quizzes." Then the whole room started telling him we're not doing a pop quiz. I think this guy's been teaching 20 or 30 years. He like to lost his mind. He didn't give us a pop quiz and he didn't even bring it up the rest of the quarter. So I just I think they're learning differently, and maybe they're learning some of the same.
Well,
But
I've been on some foundations and that distribute scholarship money, and I saw what happened. And even though I am involved with science, about 20 years ago, everything became STEM, 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 and you have people that that are going to MIT or Ivy League schools or Stanford, and they don't know anything about American history because they're just so STEM, STEM, STEM. And I don't mean like science like I learned science. It's this science has become computer science. And that wasn't considered science in the 70s. That was operating a computer not so you have people now that and what's his name's left. It's all it's STEM. STEM means in STEM world, technology became computer science, not civil engineering or mechanical engineering or chemical engineering. It's computer science. That's what's considered technology, and that's actually, if you talk to a PhD in chemistry or materials, that's really not technology. I mean, I don't want to get into this debate, but so the schools just got into this whole STEM, and a lot of them, they actually they felt that they got rid of timeline history. I've been told many times that they stopped teaching it like I was taught, and that they decided to merge history with English. So instead of having you study about the Depression and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, they give you Of Mice and Men to read because they felt timeline history was too boring.
That may
I
be
just
that may be true on some of that. I know. I'm a history major. I'm a Phi Alpha Theta history major, as they say. So I interact a little bit with the history department up there, and all my old professors have been gone for a while. I think there's some of them up there still teach timeline history, but I think there's some of them that are doing some of that. And I'm actually pretty good friends with an old sociology professor who just retired a few years ago. I see him at athletic events and we talk. So some of it's definitely changed. I think some of it at my school has not changed. And we're Louisiana Tech's an engineering school, business school. So it's not a big liberal arts college anyway. I got a quick question because I got to run. I'm not always on two-way. I join it late. If y'all are doing these, Ardizzle, can you send a link to? How would you send a link to me if I'm not there at that meeting, or how?
Yeah, I'm gonna some good housekeeping questions. Okay, so the permanent link, because this is on Raleigh. He set up a premium Zoom account, so that's in the chat. So keep that. Sorry, yeah, this morning a little confusion. Discord server. Okay, I'm gonna share that. Michael set that up, and why that's important is with the Discord chat service, we can eventually ditch Zoom. We won't need a paid Zoom account. So at the moment, that link I posted with the 89669344802, that ending, that is the permanent morning meeting link. And let me also share the Discord, okay?
Do you have to have? I have Discord. I've honestly never used it.
You got Discord? Oh my goodness, that you are ahead of the curve.
I deal with graphics people sometimes, and I was told to go to Discord, but I think it pops up whenever time I turn on my computer, but I have literally never used it.
Okay, yeah, it's a little learning curve, but it's just another WhatsApp crazy group. It looks like group chat, but it's a lot more. It's basically an all-in-one tool with video chatting and all that stuff put in. So,
Professor Kenny, don't you have a Zoom, I would say a commercial Zoom account?
Professor Kenny does, Michael does,
I know Michael does.
Raleigh does, but I mean, over the long term, we don't want that overhead is something we want to
Sure.
eliminate. And so let me stop the screen sharing and get that link.
I know that, I don't know, I haven't looked on it lately, that the original Facebook page where a lot of the people found it, I don't know if y'all use it for posting links or not.
Yeah, that's the problem. Everything's all over the place. And that's why with Discord, it'll all be in one place. Just give me 1 second. I want to make sure I share the right link. Don't send you into some crazy Discord server, and then you're gonna be like, man, this Ardizzle into some freaky stuff. Kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, so that's the Discord link. You don't need to install the app. It's actually web-based. It's quite robust software. Okay, so just wanted to share that. And James, if you want to send me your email offline or whatever, I can, I may have it already, but I don't think so. But hopefully those links will give you what you need for now.
I'll just direct message you and on that.
And then I'm
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Ro.
no, what were you gonna say, Cheryl?
No, go ahead. Finish the housekeeping. We're good.
Okay. No, just on the education topic. Well, I'll let you speak, Cheryl. I'm done with housekeeping at the moment.
Oh, Professor Kenny, how do you, for individuals who are trying to go toward this online school, how do you move them away from that?
Professor Kenny's muted.
Oh, he's muted. Okay. Yeah, so that's more that was a question about a lot of people want to move to these online schools. And I don't know if that's in the best interest because it takes away the social component.
Yeah. I think it's got the online stuff is kind of like, I think, apprentice mode, helping people figure out what they like, what they don't like. Maybe that can get the gear cranking, but then eventually, yeah, it has to be real. Real. Professor Kenny,
I had a professor tell me a few years ago when so much of it went online during COVID. And I said, well, isn't that way? I said, isn't so much of that going to be online in the future? He said, I hope not. He said, obviously some of it's going to be. He said, I'll tell you what you don't get online. I said, what's that? He said, you don't get the conversation in the hallway after class. Meaning that after the class is over and he's walking out, the student walks up to him and he says, Dr. Jones, I have a question, or I would like to know what you think about that. He said, you don't get that in online.
I agree.
I love the way he described that as the conversation in the hallway, which I had many of those.
But I don't get that. I don't get that now when I'm teaching in person. Yeah. When my students come up to me at the end of the class to ask me something, it is never about what we've just learned. It's always about their personal bullshit. Oh, professor, did you get me for attendance? I was late. Or professor, I'm going to be late tomorrow. Or can I hand
I think that's always went on.
Yeah, can I hand in my homework? Like, all shit that I don't really give a shit about. Like I'll tell you the new trend. Here's the new trend. So the new trend is heavy set girls wearing puffy clothes and saying that they did bad on the test because they're pregnant. I'm not kidding you. I am not kidding you.
Oh, that's the new hustle.
That's the new hustle.
The dog ate my homework.
I'm telling you, it's the new hustle. And the other thing is, in my syllabus, I say you're allowed 2 unexcused absences. Well, what they do is they bring in doctor's notes. And they're like, well, this isn't, so don't count it. No. So I have to take the unexcused out. And I have to just put absences, because they don't understand. This isn't high school. This isn't, you can miss 6 classes, bring in a doctor's note and everything's okay. No, you missed 2 of my classes, ball game over, because you've missed too much of the material.
I ran a few scams back in my day with professors, but one time I missed a test. Of course, this is an elective course. I didn't care anyway, but I missed it. Got to decide whether I want to complete the course. I go into, and this guy who taught it actually was the head of the department. So he never did. And I said, oh, Dr. Herman, I said, I missed a test the other day. I tell you, I ate over here at what they call the barbecue hitch. And man, there's a bunch of us that eat over there. And whatever it was, we all got sick, which was a little bit true, but not a lot true. And I'm thinking, he's going to want to see a doctor's excuse. He looked at me, he said, young man, I'm thinking, hell, he's caught on to me. He said, I know exactly what you're talking about. I quit eating there 6 months ago. I got so sick I puked up my gut for 2 days. I said, "Oh, really, Dr. Hart?" He said, "Oh, he went in his 5 minute deal about how it was the most awful place to eat. Why were you still eating there?" He said, "So I understand." He said, "Don't eat there again." I said, "What about my test?" He said, "Oh, don't worry about that." I said, "Wow, that one worked."
Hustler. Hustler.
Well,
But it
Cheryl
was-
put
I'm glad. I'm
it-
glad. Let me tell you, I'm 68. I went to Villanova in the 70s, and
We're about the same age, by the way.
Yeah, I'd be in the library, and an attractive woman would walk up to me and say, "Oh, you're in my class. You're a really smart guy." I'm like, "I'm not. Yeah, no, but you know." And they're like, Can I look at your notes?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I got a pretty photographic memory, so I've read a lot, but I'll work with you." And then, and then I'd say, "Yeah, I can tutor you. Oh, you want to come back to my room?" There
I'm not
you
gonna
go.
get
I'm
into
glad I
my notes.
wasn't online.
Hey,
I
Raleigh,
got to run.
chime in?
I've got to go, but I appreciate you doing this,
What?
and we'll
I'm
stay in
sorry.
touch. Good meeting you guys.
Right,
Cheryl,
I can't hear you.
Okay, yeah, you're a little muffled.
I was giving my a politically incorrect conversation.
anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tutoring.
I
hey
can
Raleigh,
hear
good
that.
to
I just y'all were all
good to see
talking
you.
and each over each other there for a second.
Did I miss Cheryl's whole thing about wanting to talk about online high schools? Did I miss that?
Yeah, you did. But she was
Yeah,
making
I just wanted to know your perspective on it, you know.
I
'Cause-
think education should be done in person. That's my
I
Okay,
agree.
great.
As a
Okay.
professor, I love teaching online because then I don't have to go to the school. But obviously, there's more engagement when you do it in person.
In
Okay.
terms of the classical literature, right? We didn't talk about the G word, right? They took God out of the classrooms, okay? And only by his grace did I find this Book of Melchizedek, which I think about 10, 15 years ago, maybe longer, there was a big talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls that in some cave somewhere in the Middle East, lo and behold, they found all these pieces of paper or whatever, right? And all these Bible tracts. Well, amidst this is what they claim to be the scroll of Abraham. We all know Abraham from the Old Testament. And so this is just a plug. I mean, I don't even need to plug it because eventually when people see this is out there and when the kids listen, it's just such a fascinating tale, and I'm saying tale because some of these things must have happened, right? The Greek myths can't be purely myths, right? There must be some undercurrent of truth. And a big Easter egg is Japhet, okay, is listed both in the Greek mythologies, Dolores Greek Myths, which is illustrated, which is a great read for kids, and Japhet is in Genesis 10, 21, 22. So we have some great interlinks. And then when you connect to that Shahnameh epic of kings, kids will be absolutely delighted to know that, oh, there were these noble kings out there and these, empires that were doing the Lord's work, So that's the type of material that we can, and it's all free. It's all free.
Bro, I got a Dead Sea Scrolls story for you. So I had this girlfriend. It's 1981. She got really into religion. So it's the Super Bowl. And when I'm watching the pregame of the Super Bowl, she said, "I want to talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Do you know about the Dead Sea Scrolls?" I said, "I graduated from Villanova University. I took 24 credits of religious study. I haven't, okay." She said, "But you're not interested." I said, "It's the Super Bowl. The Bengals are playing the 49ers. Joe Montana, who went to Notre Dame. Okay, I'm watching Super Bowl." She said, "You're not. Where are we going with our relationship? You're not interested in the same things as I am." And I said, "Well, I'm watching the Super Bowl. Well, I can talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls on Friday night. We can talk all about it." She said, "Well, it's obvious, like you don't want the same things out of life that I do. You don't know why we're here. If you knew about the Dead Sea Scroll, you'll know why we're here." And I said, "I'm here right now. Why? I'm a linear thinker. I'm watching the Super Bowl." She said, "Well, I'm leaving." She left, and I
She
never
left. It's
heard
the
from.
best thing that ever happened to you.
I
You're
never
like,
heard
honey,
from her.
sweetie,
I
they'll still be
never.
dead after the Super
She
Bowl. They'll all
left,
be
and
dead.
back then, nobody had a cell phone. I never heard from her again, ever. She left over the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Timing. That's
Yeah.
a
I
funny
was,
one,
I
Vincent.
was wanting to say,
I got
I was
so
just wanting
many.
to
I got so
contribute
many
that.
like that.
Okay, Raleigh, speak up. It's a little muffled.
Yeah, I was just wanting to say, like, about that higher education debate y'all are having. I'm okay with it being in person, but I've been looking at statistics where there's been a 6,000% increase in non-academic staff at a lot of these institutions over the past 30 years. And the price of higher education has quadrupled, increased fivefold in the past 30 years, 40 years. It's much faster than the price of inflation, even at public state schools. And so I'm all for in public education as long as it can be delivered more cheaply than whatever is happening now. There seems to be all this staff. I don't understand the reason. I was hearing when they were cutting funding to these universities through the NIH and National Science Foundation, they also said that we're not going to give you 63% to cover the overhead for the research. And I was all in for that. Because these colleges are just burning through money, and it's like, what do you need all this for? You're just teaching, you're just trying to transfer knowledge from person A to person B. All this other stuff you don't need. If it went online, they would definitely not need all that other stuff. And the other thing is, where I went to school, they had a big sports program. I don't think that's necessary. You get rid of the college campus, it's only 10, 20 years before that goes too, because nobody has a connection to their individual campuses like that. And, I think that they need to figure out ways to make college cheaper and less expensive and fewer inputs.
I'll tell you, people, I've talked to a lot of people under 30, and they do read, because they can tell me all about Bitcoin, and I never had any interest in that, right? And they're telling me about Ripple and Bitcoin, and you must know all the names, and they're going on this and that. I don't know. I never had any interest in it. It's like, but they are reading. They do know a lot about crypto. There's no doubt about that.
They're probably just watching YouTubes on it.
I was just my thing is, how many ways are there, for example, to teach the quadratic equation? There's only so many ways to teach, right? Whether it's mathematics or, maybe Latin grammar, like breaking down the syllables, right? And so, maybe there's 100 videos on YouTube on how to teach the quadratic equation, like whatever it is, right? The thought that we're paying thousands of dollars for these textbooks and curriculums where it should be all out there. So, I mean, that to me, in terms of...
And then the tuition, you're not counting the tuition. The tuition has skyrocketed. And, like I said, there's been a 6,000% increase in non-academic staff.
When I went to Villanova in 1975, and I had a half scholarship, so it was $4,000 a year for everything, tuition and room and board. So it was $16,000. So my family, my father had to pay $8,000, and to the day he died, "You're some rich kid that went to Villanova. I didn't have the opportunity that you had. I had to go to night school, and I was sleeping in the same bed as my twin brother." But anyway, I was coming out of Korea, blah blah. So, but so then I got involved with my school, like in 2000. They put me on this executive leadership council or something, and so then I interview people. My school is 80,000 a year now, so I wouldn't be able to afford to go there. I was a middle class stiff, and I actually, my father didn't pay 8,000. I took a student loan for 2,000. So my father paid 6,000, and he was still complaining about it till, the day he died. But it's now 80 or 85,000 a year times 4. It's $320,000. It's crazy. I
Well,
mean,
I could tell you what the problem is with student loans. Okay, I'll just give it to you in the simplest form. The problem with student loans is they give out too much money to the student, and
yes.
and the student, and I'll tell you how it happens. Let's say, I went to Goddard College for my MFA in creative writing, right?
Oh
So
wow, you're a talented dude, bro.
thank you. So Goddard, I think for graduate school for the year, 2 semesters was about 12,000, maybe that much. Well, they offered me 20 something thousand in student loans, because they try and figure in housing and they try and figure in
Right.
books and all of this bullshit that you don't really need because you're living at home. So, of course, what do? Give me the 20 grand. You know what I mean? So I pay off. So my tuition's paid, and now I got 9 grand sitting in my pocket. I can go buy a car, I can go to Hawaii, whatever. And that's the thought process of young students. So the argument could be, well, that's your problem. You're 100% right. It is my problem. It was my prerogative. But don't throw this money at young people because they're not going to say no. They're
And
not.
and you're so correct
They're
because
not going to say, I don't want that extra 9 grand because I don't need it. They're going to say, I'll worry about it later because after I get my college degree in home economics or whatever the fuck it is, where I can't go get a job,
Gender studies.
I still have to work in Target, right? I still have to work in Target for minimum wage after I get my master's or whatever. They're not going to be able to pay their student loans.
That's
So,
absolutely right. That's what's
and
happening.
and you're absolutely right because I like at Villanova they didn't have student housing junior and senior year, so I had to live in a shithole with like 3 other people. I lived in some really, really bad, shitty places, and they weren't dangerous. They're just shitholes. And my cousin had a daughter. She went to NYU, and she was, they're giving her like a student loan for 60,000 a year. So she gets out and she owes, you
yeah.
know, but was she living in a shithole in New York City? No, she living in Montclair in a $3,000 a month apartment.
Yep.
Like, you're right. I've seen this with my cousin's kids. They're like living in these beautiful places off of student loans. You're right. Nobody wants to live in a shithole.
What they should do with student loans is the student loan should only be for tuition.
I agree.
Okay. And then after tuition, if more money is needed, then that student needs to apply to the
Only apply.
state for some kind of Pell Grant.
Right.
Some kind of state tap, tuition assistance, whatever it is, and they can say, all right, you need X, and they got to come to you, got to show them your rent bill and what your earnings are, so that you can, so they can narrow it down, and then that money can be given to you without having to pay back. So the only thing you need to pay
agree.
back, is your
I agree with
tuition.
all these points and proposals, and I think they would make substantial differences. I just don't understand why there's been a 6,000% increase in non-academic staff from the
Oh
time
yeah,
y'all went to college
because
back
some of
in the day, and when we're going to college now. What's the reason for this increase in
so
non-academic staff?
the economists with PhDs have theorized that the student loans being so easy to get let the colleges charge more. That's what a lot of intellectuals think.
Yeah, that's part of it. And and another big problem with academia and colleges, especially in city universities or public universities, is the professors don't even teach.
Right.
they get these huge salaries and they don't teach. They're always out on sabbatical, writing a book, doing whatever they do. So who does the teaching? Guys like me, who I'm an adjunct. I've been an adjunct for 27 years. So it's, I'm not a full-fledged college professor. I'm a hired gun, but of course, I have the title, I have the credentials, and I've been teaching for 27 years. And but these professors who make all of this money don't even teach. They barely
Right.
teach.
Right. So you're
Yeah,
right.
that's
So,
another problem. That's another problem.
well, yeah, and if you look at, so I'm involved, with the science of nanotechnology, and I've sent, and so I've been, I've spoken at many schools, and so if you take a school like Harvard or MIT or Yale or Stanford or Georgia Tech, they are teaching chemistry, and those professors are getting research. All those schools I just mentioned each get $1 billion for research and development, and those professors all make about 250, and they don't teach. They don't. They have graduate assist, and I've talked to the graduate assistants over the 20 years. The graduate assistants in the PhD program are the ones that do all the teaching, and they report to those real professors that make 250, who then get the money for R&D, and then they spin out IP, and but they don't. Those big professors do not teach any classes. The graduate assistants teach all the classes that are in the PhD programs.
Yep.
Oh
Guys,
yeah,
what we're talking about, it reminds me, oh my God, my union days, right? Where it's like my boss had that old school mentality where it's like if I start picking up trash in the union hall, he goes, no, 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 no. That's the janitor's job. You're taking away someone's job. And that backwards, okay, like I understand from his technical letter, whatever, what he's trying to get across, but to the Masood, the former MEK cult, okay, the positive nationalism, right? Like all hands on deck. I'm not trying to take away someone's job. I'm just trying to do what's right for the country. And I put up Wild Wild Country in the background for a second, that Osho documentary on Netflix. Osho, so-called Osho cult leader, Bhagwan. The media would call, and just so you show you the media, okay, they'll call him the Bhagwan, Bhagwan, God. They were literally calling this guy God. It's like walking up to someone going, hey, God, how are you doing, God? The point of that documentary, though, you can learn all the things not to do, right? Like Tim Allen Tool Time, okay? But if you see the good people in that cult, what they were actually doing with their own bootstraps. Some guy knows how to drive a tractor. He's creating a waterway. Another guy. So it's like bootstrapping, doing those things, and educators kind of just like, I mean, a lot of them are already doing it. You see educators putting their lectures online or whatever the case may be. But
No, I agree with you, Raul, about that. That universities need a return to learn how to bootstrap. Like that's what I mean by the 6,000% increase in non-academic stuff. What do you need that for? Like start cutting costs everywhere. That's what I've been saying. Like you're making my point. Like start cutting costs. Huh?
yeah, sorry, that last part cut out. If you want to repeat that one more time.
Yeah, no, I just said keep cutting costs. Like that's what I'm saying. Like that 6,000% increase in non-academic stuff. That's so like wasteful.
Yep.
What is that necessary for? And I don't ever hear anybody defend it. I just hear people just kind of avoid it and make other points. But where's the defense for it? And it just keeps going. Like they need to cut that. It wasn't around in the 80s, and people got perfectly good college degrees back then. I don't understand why they need all this additional staff.
no,
Okay,
and there's gonna be it's even it they're really gonna lay into all these prestigious universities that receive funding for R&D. They're really, when you have a university that has an endowment of 30 or 40 billion, why, the word's out now from Doge that, why are we providing a university for research and development when we could, what are we getting from the research and development? It's not, and then if they want to do that research and development and come up with IP, then the schools should just pay for it themselves. And that's where we're heading to with these people. It's been the funding of these prestigious universities, the R&D. There's been a friction between the uh, the private sector and these people in academia. It's been going on for 40 years, and it's going to catch up with the people in academia.
Okay, guys, some housekeeping before I think Cheryl has to hop off here soon. This is just who I noted down. It's who's been on our after meetings. Okay, Michael started at Raleigh, myself, Professor Kenny, Cheryl, Chris, Dean from Ohio, Dan Olivio, Andrew Tawani, Duke Lamont, James was on, Rep Jen Hudson, I believe. Alan was on earlier, Mandrava, some Indian dude sounding name probably. Philip Beniola, I think. Some
Yep.
guy that held up Carl Menger's book. Deborah Knox. I don't know if she's been on. Just I remember her name.
I've seen her name, yeah.
She
Okay.
hasn't been on. She hasn't been on.
Okay. So Deborah.
There was a Kathy somebody on one time. Who was
Yes,
that?
Kathy
Yes,
didn't like my
Kathy.
art glasses.
Yeah.
I'll never forget
Okay.
that.
Okay, so are you just gonna make sure you have their info to make sure that?
Yeah, we want to get everyone on the Discord channel eventually, because that will eliminate this whole
Let them
meeting
know.
link. Yeah,
Okay.
problem. If there's any other names that I should add here, anyone notable? Anyone?
Okay.
Any names?
I'm
Well,
gonna go back.
we still gotta get more people, you know.
Well, we might need to, I don't know, like I said before, I thought if it was more, and I know it's kind of whatever anybody feels like talking about, but maybe some days it's geared toward we're looking at talking about specific topics.
Talking
Yeah,
points.
you're right.
Yes.
Maybe you're
And
right.
then if we say what topics we're, then maybe you get interest there. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be topic focused every single. I mean, some days it could be just like we are now, just kind of a hangout, say what you want to say, just throw out whatever thoughts you want to just let it just be with the flow.
No, I agree with you because
But then
maybe so what
there's
you
one or
yeah.
2 days just we're focusing on something that maybe was an
Breaking
interesting
news,
thing.
whatever the hot topic is. The
Yeah,
Discord.
or something that was really hot on Mark's thing, and we couldn't really get into it because he needed to move on. I don't know. I'm just trying to see how do we get the
I
interest.
agree with you because we could be on like the topic of Social Security or the United States budget or education or tariffs. I agree with you.
Yes. Yeah, no, we want to steer the conversation. The Discord server is gonna and I thought Discord was some evil satanic just because of the name. And Discord used to there was people on YouTube whose channels they'd like bring too many people into the Discord server and they would end up getting suspended, whatever. Now, here's the beauty of two-way is Mark is our filter, right? It's like you got to pay the piper. Once you do the two-way morning, we know you're legit. You know what I mean? You're not trying to get a shutdown or whatever. Then you can join the Discord server and help shape the conversation or, whatever. We'll be able to.
Or if there are people that we know that are legit that we think would be interested in the conversation, we could bring them in.
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah, you
mean,
guys got all
to grow it. And I mean, you might need to grow it. It may not be all from two-way. It might grow bigger if it's not two-way. I don't know.
No, I wanted to qualify that, Cheryl. I mean, strangers have to go through two-way, but then we're all right. This is the VIP, baby. So then, you guys can extend the invitations out to people you trust, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And they have to be associated with two-way, and that'll be great.
Yeah. Like today, I got into the conversation, but I missed a lot of. I don't know. Did you all talk about Booker? The conversation came up about Booker. Did anybody talk about that on our?
No, no,
No.
I'm glad we didn't. No,
Well, I
like,
just thought-
I'm not a
it's
Booker fan.
interesting.
I just didn't
A
know. If
lot,
he brought it up.
I've just, yesterday, I thought about something yesterday and this morning. Somebody was on the call and they said they, they don't know who I am, and they said, do you think that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme? And it's not, and I don't.
In two-way. This was in two-way.
No, this was on our call. So the
You know,
guy was.
Dan Olivio was
Yeah,
the one.
he got
kind of
really jacked
got
up,
you.
now he doesn't know that I did my master's thesis on Social Security. He doesn't know that I know all about it, and I didn't, and I know all about the history of the Ponzi scheme. So I agree with him. Elon Musk should not have been saying that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. And then he asked me, "Do you think Social Security is a Ponzi scheme?" And the answer is no. I do not think. I know it's not a Ponzi scheme. It's a taxation program. So it was interesting. Like there's never been a long form discussion with Mark on like Social Security and and it was interesting to hear that person say that to me about, "Well, is it a Ponzi scheme?" And that's why I know a few people yesterday. Don was listening to the history. It's so important to understand the history of all this legislation and how it evolved to where we are today.
Okay,
I mean,
so listen. Even Professor Kennedy said you sometimes you have to kind of. I mean, I don't know. Just because he asked the question doesn't mean it could have been a good thing. Him asking the question. Maybe he's asking the question because he didn't know. Maybe he's asking the question like it's Dan. So who knows what is.
Well, the
no,
guy who asked about the Ponzi scheme was Dan Olivo.
That's what I know.
Yeah.
I said, who knows
Yeah.
why Dan? You
And
know how
Dan,
Dan's
Dan-
mind's lying.
but you can't counter Dan because then he goes, "Oh, what aboutism? What aboutism?" You know what I mean? Like that's his defense of the Democratic side. Like we're not allowed to bring up
I
all
know.
of their failings.
I
You
know.
know, it's only address what he's asking at this moment in time.
Yeah,
So
Right.
I understand.
Yeah.
It's like the birth. It's like the Bertha thing. I don't know who brought that up. Chris brought the Bertha thing up.
Oh
I
yeah,
think that
somebody.
I don't know why Trump focused on that, but this is my perspective of this, and I didn't say this yesterday. Was the whole Bertha thing is Trump brought it up. I mean, he brought up the thing was Kamala a black woman too during this time, this last election, and so, but the Bertha question and the question about is Kamala black. I mean, it's fair game when you're in politics. People ask all kind of things.
It's
I don't know
it's a
why
blood
people are upset
sport.
about
Yeah.
it, but when I think about it, I'm like, you know, if, I don't have a problem with the question, and I even have more issues with Obama that the fact that he didn't even show the birth certificate for how long? I mean, it took him almost how many a year or so or longer for him to even produce the birth certificate. So my thing is, which kind of fed into it. So I'm like, okay, I don't have a problem with people questioning things. It's okay.
With like the nerd hat, this is what the computer science mind goes to. Oh, I see. There's about maybe a dozen topics that we all, whether it's something recent like Signalgate, whether it's something older like 1979, Iran, the Shah, right? Or whatever, they're gonna be on always there until we get these longer discussions to draw.
Yeah.
That's going to be great on the Discord forum. We are going to be able to organize those topics and really start flushing things out. Which is
I don't know. I think we can go too long on a topic and people will be gone.
No, I agree. I mean, Cheryl, like a special show. So we can have like the normal format, key talking points, and then we can say, okay, on a given mid-April or whatever, right? We're gonna, special show type of.
I mean, like for example, and I won't monopolize the conversation, but we should have a conversation about the budget and that the expenses are 7 trillion. So when Doge first came about, Musk said they were going to cut 2 trillion. Well, you can't cut 2 trillion from 7 trillion in expenses. It's not reasonable. It's not. It can't be done. So let's have a conversation about the components of the 7 trillion in expenses, and so that people have a better understanding, because I don't see anybody talking about it in the media. No, it's too complex of a conversation. And then you just have all these talking points, and the Democrats are screaming at the Republicans and their surrogates and the sycophants. But like, let's have a real conversation about the $7 trillion of expenses. You know,
Okay, it looks like no one has clicked the Discord. I'm just checking the channel. I'm trying to see if there's any updates here. Oh, okay, Professor. I think Professor, you're on the Discord.
Yes.
YJK6. Okay, great. Okay. Well, that's fine.
all right. Well, I'm sorry if I think we should have an agenda for a topic. That's good.
Yeah,
I
no, the
do.
Discord is going to be tremendously helpful, because then, we can chat offline and just slowly just get that gear rolling. We're all on different time zones and schedules and whatever. And so, and the fact that Discord has video calling built into the darn thing is going to be, that's going to help whoever, Professor Kenny, whoever's interested. My dream has always been since the start, right? We want as many people doing their independent YouTube channels, to start getting the critical thinking out there. And then also to be fact checked, right? It's like, once I get out what's in my gut and I put it out there, people are going to comment. They're going to either say, oh, you're right, or you're full of it. And they're going to force me to sharpen my thinking skills.
Yeah, like today, Alan, who's a really sweetheart of a guy, but when he was going down that rabbit hole about the Republican Party being more social, like being moderately social, socially
No, I
moderate.
know that's why I
I was
brought.
like, I
Yeah,
was like,
that's
hold on there,
ridiculous.
buddy. I'm a Republican, and
No,
I can honestly tell you that ain't the fact.
no, and
I'm not socially moderate. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
no, but and then a lot of people over the years of even my wife, she's like, so why are so many Jewish people Democrats? And I said, well, in 1976, when I was working on the Ford campaign and even the Reagan campaign, a lot of Republicans were anti-Semitic, and everybody knew Republicans were anti-Semitic. So that's why a lot of my Jewish friends and their families were never Republicans, because the John Birch Society was part of the Republican Party,
Yeah.
and they were anti-Semitic. I mean, and it was like, ugh, because there were times where I would be at events and they would say to me, "Oh, don't tell a Jewish joke. Vincent's Jewish." And then I said, "Well, you shouldn't tell Jewish jokes. What did you? Oh, but your name's Vincent Shapiro." I said, "No, my name's Vincent Caprio, but it doesn't matter. But you sound like a Jew." I know, because I'm from New York. I heard that so many times. Like, I was in Texas one time in a meeting, in a corporate meeting, and they're like, "Oh yeah, don't tell Jew jokes in front of Vincent. He's a Jew." I'm like, "Oh, whatever." I mean, it's unbelievable. So, there was a long history of anti-Semitism in the Republican Party, and Bill Buckley
Benny,
told.
you do sound like somebody on Seinfeld. Just a Texas Jew here. You sound like someone on the cast of Seinfeld.
Right, I know, but that's because I have a New York accent, and it's interesting because my wife was from Illinois. She was born in Springfield, and then we started dating, and then we went to a good friend of mine. His daughter was born, and they had the ceremony, and we were driving home, and she's like, coming back from the temple, and she says, "So, like, what do those people believe in again?" And I said, "You don't know anything about the Jewish religion?" She's like, "No, I never met anybody Jewish till I met you." She goes, "Oh, that came out the wrong way." She goes, "I know you're not Jewish." She said, but she never met anyone Jewish. She's from like Springfield, Illinois. She, and I was talking to her mother, who was from Oklahoma, and she told me that when she was a kid, they told her that Jews had horns. I'm like, really? Like the devil? And I'm like, really? They would say that to you? She said, yeah, that's what they used to teach us. I'm like, oh my God.
No, you're Jew adjacent, Vincent, right? You're adjacent to the Jews. But the good news is here, and I couldn't have said this 5-10 years ago, okay? But the belief is amongst at least some Hindus, this Hindu, okay, is that Brahma, okay, is Abraham. Abraham was Abram, right? He was Abram before he was Abraham. All right. And in Hinduism, he's known as the four-faced Lord, because in Book of Melchizedek, we learn that Abraham was the tip of the spear. When the war was going on with Sodom and Gomorrah or whatever, Shem the Melchizedek, right, saw that Abraham is like, well, I can't, whatever, it's the whole story, right? But that connecting it to Hinduism, and it's not polytheism. Polytheism is of the devil. So once you start lining up the messengers of God, okay, you get this beautiful tapestry that really warms the heart and brings people together. But without that knowledge, you got, the crazy Hindus with all their 1,000 gods over there, and then and then all the inserts start flying, whatever, right? So it's just dropping that knowledge, bringing people back to Christ, right? And then those that preceded and whatever. So I gotta push my Jesus.
Hey, good. Now, is everybody gone now?
Looks like we still got Cheryl and Professor Kenny and
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I didn't see their faces. Well, I actually wanted to talk to you offline. I sent you an email. I have a project I want to do, and seems like you you could help me do the project.
All right, I'm pulling up my email here.
Okay, so do I have a channel? I'm on off two-way. Is that you told me to come on off two-way? Is that you?
Yes, that's the
Okay, so
Discord.
now it's saying these are your channels. Channels are places in your server where people can talk about different topics.
Yeah, so Discord has a default thing. We haven't really, Michael just set it up and then I haven't configured it, but little by little we'll start. Let me bring up the Discord now. So
just get off of that now. It says, okay, these are your channels. I don't know what that is. It's saying anyone wants to hang out this weekend. These are your, I don't want either one or.
Let me just make sure I see. Oh, there's Cheryl. Okay, so welcome and
get out of this mess. Welcome and rules.
Hello.
Okay.
Yeah. This is just all the basic. Nothing's been set up yet, so eventually we'll flush out the channel.
Okay.
Whatever, yeah.
So I'm assuming I'm on. Okay.
Yes, and I will just.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's good. It's good. This is all learning here, and let me bring up. Okay. All
okay,
right.
So now they got a thing out here on Salem that says let me see what they're saying here. Salem.
So Adam's got a.
Man approve of Trump actions.
You guys saw that Adam's got a.
Yep, I put that in the chat on two-way.
Yeah, that was great.
It's been dismissed. That's what I want to know. What you're
because it's not without prejudice. It's with prejudice, right? So without prejudice. I forget which one it is. They can't come after him again.
What's the news story?
I don't think they should have come after him anyway.
No, exactly. Adams in New York got the judge dismissed the case. Trump's people wanted them to dismiss the case, but with prejudice, so that they can come back at him if they needed to. And the judge said, no, we're dismissing it without prejudice, so they can't come out after him.
So when the moving company's been called, Cuomo's moving his stuff into the office.
Let me tell you something. That guy, what a crock that guy
I don't know if he's gonna get in. I don't know.
Yeah, he is.
I mean, I don't know.
He is.
I mean,
You,
you think he will?
I think
I
he's got. I think he will,
you think
Cheryl.
you guys think I talk too much and I know too many stories? I could do 5 hours on him. You don't
Yeah.
want to know.
Listen. I know personal things about him. I had a dear friend much older than I that went to college with him. That went to college with Andrew at St. John's, and he said Andrew would literally buy the papers from people. People would do his papers for him.
He's the
And
most
this wasn't something he told me recently. This was 30 years ago. He told me this.
he is the
25 years
most
ago.
ruthless politician
Yeah.
in the 21st century.
Yeah.
He is. His goal is to be president of the United States. It's been that since his father never ran. That's what he's obsessed with, and that's what his goal is. And he will be elected mayor. All the big money is with him. He's got the war chest. They're moving along, and he's become the law and order candidate.
Yeah.
You know, I've been listening to him my whole life. And
Are we
his
talking
father.
Eric Adams or Andrew Cuomo, Raleigh?
Cuomo. He's going to
Oh.
be the mayor. He's got all the money, big money, all the Wall Street Democrats. He has all the money ready to go. He's
And
at
see-
33%, and Adams at 6%.
Yeah.
It's
And the thing
over.
that kills me is the Democrats, they go, Trump should be disqualified for January 6th and all of this shit. But it's okay that Cuomo's back out there, right?
Listen, the most significant thing that happened, and it happened on two-way. So we got to meet Richie Torres twice.
Yes.
Richie Torres endorsed Cuomo.
Yes, he did.
Case closed.
Well, that's because he wants to be governor. Richard Torres.
Yeah, right.
Governor. I mean, who wants him for governor? I don't think they want.
Cuomo's machine is a machine.
Yeah.
You don't want.
Think Torres is going to go to the governor's mansion?
Who knows? But
Kenny?
don't ever
I
forget.
tell you what, I got to be honest with you. Richie Torres is a very smart guy, and he's likable. However,
can't get upstate New York.
His voting pattern is still all the way the Dems go. And in New York State, you have a very strong Republican hold in anything outside of New York City.
What I said, New York upstate is bad.
Yep, and I don't know if they'll go for Richie Torres.
I
don't think they're going to go for him.
You know the whole history of Cuomo and his father, and so think about this. Elliot Spitzer had a 1600 on his SAT, went to Princeton, brilliant man, moving right along, started paying the hookers $8,000 a month, and who went to the feds to rat out Spitzer? The Attorney General, Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah.
So he could eventually become
he
the
wanted
governor.
The job.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. They're ruthless, man. They don't. So he decided he's running, resurrect.
Well, a lot of the
career.
unions are coming out for him, but I don't know. I agree with Professor Kenny. I don't know. I think he's
no. Adams is at 6%. Cuomo's at 33% in the polls.
Adams' biggest problem was this, and I'm friends with Eric Adams, by the way. We have, not that I hang out with him and stuff like that, but I've had interaction with him several times. He knows who I am, and I voted for him. And the problem with him was he put in all his friends in these positions, and they all screwed him. He didn't vet them. They all had back channel things going on. He thought they would. I'm sure he wasn't naive to it, but he didn't think it would, that they would bring that into his administration, and they did. And then it was just total disaster.
As they say on the street, they rolled on him.
Yeah, exactly.
But you ever notice? No one rolled on Cuomo. All the people that rolled, there's nothing criminal. There's nothing civil. You
Well,
know,
what they do is with Cuomo's situation, especially first he killed all those old people with COVID during
yeah, a
COVID,
million
and
people, right?
right,
Right.
and lied about it,
Right.
and then every day came into our homes with those brilliant press conferences, right? Those brilliant
Oh, I'd
updates
watch
on
them
COVID
every day. They
day,
were
right?
great.
We loved them, but meanwhile, the whole time he didn't know what the hell he was doing, and he was lying. And then, of course, he's a touchy-feely guy. You know, he's got his hands all over women all the time.
Old line Paul.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
what about your Hochul? What's going to happen with her?
She's gone.
she's
I hope she's
toast.
gone. Nobody
Yeah.
wanted her from the
You want
beginning.
to you want to
Nah.
They
hear his
moved her
story?
away.
Nah, nobody
So
likes her.
when they were talking about Cuomo resigning, they did a poll, and they asked people in New York State, "Who is Hochul?"
And nobody knew.
Only 1% of the people knew who she was, and
Yeah.
that's because Cuomo chose her because he didn't want anyone that was. She was some state rep living in a $200,000 condo in Buffalo. He's
Yeah.
American aristocracy. He
Yeah.
thinks he's like the Kennedys and the Bushes,
Yeah.
and he picked her because she's a nobody.
Well, this is the biggest thing too with like I watch News Nation, so you got Chris Cuomo on all
Yeah.
the time, and by the way, Chris Cuomo, you talk about somebody who reinvented himself, right?
Oh,
When he was on CNN, him and Don Lemon were the two. I mean, I couldn't stand them. I hated them with their sanctimony. Oh my God! So Cuomo had to reinvent himself, right? And I don't fault him for trying to help his brother out. That's a brother thing. So he took, he got fired for it. So that was it. Plus, they knew they had to break up him and Lemon. They were killing their ratings. Their ratings were going down.
right.
But anyway, um, Chris Cuomo always talks about his father and saying, my father was a lion of the Democratic Party, and he was this, and he was the old liberal. Listen, your father got elected governor. He couldn't win the mayor. He lost to Abe Beame to become mayor of. Oh no, to Ed Koch. I'm sorry, to Ed Koch
Yeah.
to be mayor of New York City. He got in. He luckily got in as governor of New York, and then lost to what's his name? Who was actually a good governor. But it was a surprising loss.
You mean at the end, Pataki?
Yeah, Pataki. He lost to
Yeah,
Pataki.
but now let me tell you about the first campaign for governor. You probably don't remember this. He ran against Koch for governor.
That's right. Koch tried
Okay,
to
you
run.
ready for
Exactly.
this? Who was the campaign manager? Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah.
And they had signs all over New York and bumper stickers that they get to the community. Cuomo or the homo. That was the campaign. They said that. They
Yeah.
said these guys are the lowest. They are
Yeah.
ruthless.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they said that he was gay. He was a homo. He's a homosexual. He's never been married. So the campaign was Cuomo versus the homo, and Cuomo won the primary, and he went on to the general election to become
Yeah.
governor.
Yeah.
Oh, it was dirty. It was a dirty campaign. Him and
Yeah.
versus Koch. Oh. They just, it's
Koch wouldn't have been a good governor. Koch was better suited to be the mayor of New York. That.
and I it was around then in 1979. Oh my gosh, how bad things were in New York City.
Big time. Big time.
Oh God,
Big
it
time.
was just I mean, think about it. Times Square was you walk into Times Square, you couldn't walk 10 feet without some guy saying, "Hey, you want a nickel bag? You want a dime
Yeah.
bag?
Well, you know
You need
what
some
though?
heroin?"
But Koch didn't clean up didn't clean up 42nd Street. It was Giuliani
Yeah.
who cleaned it up. So
Hey, and to his credit, Trump cleaned up the Hilton at Grand Central,
yes.
and and Trump did good things. I mean, he helped clean the place up when nobody else would.
Yeah.
I mean, but the Hilton, that was a shithole too until he cleaned it up.
Dolly has a question for us. Ask them if they ever read The Bronx is Burning.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And they actually did a didn't
A
Netflix-
documentary.
But yeah, there's documentaries, and there was also, I think, a fictional series too, based on it.
Unfortunately, I was in New York City in 1977 on the night of one of those bad fires. I was there, you know.
What, during the blackout or?
Yeah, during the
Yeah,
blackout and all the
yeah.
fires, you know.
I used to spend my summers in New Hampshire, so I avoided the blackout.
So do you when this is a so I was in 8th grade. There was, you know, we thought we were, you know, tough. So a friend of mine's mother, you know, she, you know, all of us were Italian American, and so the mother was there. We're going up to Yankee Stadium, and we're, you know, going up, taking the train. But so she turns, she says, "Look, you boys, will pay attention." And then the mother handed us 4 switchblades. That's what it's like. That's what it's like growing up in New York City if you're Italian American.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
the mother.
Cheryl, you wanna get in on here? We're kind of going all around, or did Cheryl have to take off? Oh,
Yeah, I don't see her.
No, it's people
She
that.
she had to leave at like
Yeah.
at 11 her
I
time.
got your email, Vincent. Did you wanna wait till later, or you wanna get into it, or it's up to you?
Oh, you want to talk tomorrow then?
Yeah.
Or maybe, or do you want to talk this afternoon?
Man, you got me on the spot. I just think with my parents, it's hard to schedule things. I can stick around here. I know Professor Kenny had to.
Oh,
I think.
okay. Yeah, let's talk then. And thank you so much, Professor Kenny.
All right, guys. I'm gonna blow.
Right.
All right, I'll see you.
Thanks. So so what's the best name to call you? What's your nickname?
R Dizzle. R Dizzle is the nickname.
R Dizzle. Okay.
Yeah, and,
So-
and Duke Lamont, even if you switch it to drizzle, like a nice rain drizzle, that's fine too.
Okay. So yeah, I'm not, you know, I'm like, it's hard to, so I'm the founder and president of Nano Business Commercialization Association. So I was one of the advocates for the National Nanotechnology Initiative.
Oh, wait,
And
wait,
you
I
know-
just realized something. I should stop the live, unless, right? You don't want to.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's fine.
Okay.